Everyone in the galaxy abandoned the Trillians, calling them pathetic and weak, and they were all going to let that weak species be slaughtered, but not the humans. Brayler watched in horror as the ruthless Craxian warships blasted through his peaceful planet's pitiful defenses. Trillion cities were obliterated, hospitals and schools burned. Brayler's own university crumbled, burying his beloved mentor, Dr. Zalvox, in rubble. The Craxians invaded because the Trillians were seen as a pathetic, feeble species, too weak to fight back, too useless to be worth protecting. The powerful Galactic Federation had pledged to defend Trillia, but when the Craxians attacked, the Federation fled. They abandoned the Trillians, leaving them to be massacred. Brayler huddled in an underground bunker with a few survivors. The stench of death filled the air. All seemed lost. Trillia would fall, and Brayler's entire species would be killed or enslaved. Their only hope was to contact the humans, the one species that might be brave enough and determined enough to save them. Without the humans, they would all surely perish. Brayler and the other survivors huddled around the flickering hologram projector in the dank bunker, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would respond to their desperate pleas for help. They had been sending out distress calls for days, but so far, only silence answered them. The Galactic Federation had abandoned them, and it seemed the rest of the galaxy had too. Suddenly the projector crackled to life. A human face appeared, a man with piercing blue eyes and a determined expression. "This is Captain James Hawkins of the UES Endeavour. We received your distress call and are en route to provide assistance. Hold tight, help is on the way." Brayler's heart leaped, but then sank again. The humans, he had heard stories about their kind, aggressive, unpredictable, prone to violence. Could they really trust them? But what choice did they have? The Craxians would slaughter them all if they didn't get help soon. "Thank you, Captain Hawkins," Brayler said, his voice shaking. "We will send you our coordinates. Please hurry." Hours later, the human ship landed near the ruins of Brayler's university. Captain Hawkins emerged, flanked by his first officer, a tall woman with fiery red hair and a balding man with kind eyes, who Brayler guessed was their doctor. Brayler stepped forward to greet them, his heart pounding. Up close, the humans looked even more intimidating, with their strange, pale skin and their bulky spacesuits. But when Captain Hawkins removed his helmet, his face was etched with sorrow and sympathy. "I'm so sorry," the captain said, looking around at the devastation. "I can't imagine what you've been through. We're here to help in any way we can." Tears pricked Brayler's eyes. After so much death and destruction, after being abandoned by everyone, this simple kindness from a stranger was almost too much to bear. The human doctor, Dr. Reeves, was already triaging the wounded, his hands gentle as he bandaged burns and set broken bones. Lieutenant Commander Thompson organized teams to search for survivors in the rubble. But Brayler knew it wasn't enough. They had to stop the Craxians, or his whole world would fall. "Captain, I am grateful for your aid, but we must do more than treat the wounded and bury the dead. The Craxians will not stop until they have conquered or killed us all. We must fight back." Captain Hawkins met his gaze, his jaw set. "I understand. We will do whatever we can to help you defend your home. You have my word." For the first time since the invasion began, Brayler felt a flicker of hope. Maybe with the humans by their side, they stood a chance after all. The humans seemed aggressive, yes, but perhaps that aggression could be turned against the Craxians. Perhaps human determination and human courage were exactly what the Trillians needed to survive. Captain Hawkins stood in the makeshift command center, his brow furrowed as he studied the holographic map of Trillia. Red markers indicated Craxian strongholds, while blue represented the dwindling Trillian resistance. Brayler stood beside him, his eyes haunted but determined. "We can't do this alone," Hawkins muttered. He tapped his comm badge. "Hawkins to UES High Command, requesting immediate reinforcements to Trillia. The Craxians are slaughtering civilians. We need help now." A stern voice crackled over the comm. "Captain Hawkins, your request is noted. However, official aid could take weeks to mobilize. There are bureaucratic procedures, political concerns. Hawkins slammed his fist on the table, making Brayler flinch. To hell with procedures. People are dying down here. I'm sorry, Captain. My hands are tied. Do what you can with what you have. High command out. Hawkins cursed under his breath. Brayler placed a tentative hand on his arm. Captain, I understand if you need to leave. You've already done so much. Hawkins shook his head. No, we're not abandoning you. If High Command won't send help, we'll just have to make do ourselves. He turned to his crew. Thompson, Reeves, rally every able-bodied person we've got. Human, Trillion, doesn't matter. We're forming a resistance. Dr. Reeves looked up from where he was splinting a Trillion child's arm. What about the wounded, sir? We'll set up a field hospital, train some of the Trillions in human medical techniques, so you're not stretched thin. Thompson nodded, already pulling up a roster on her datapad. Aye, Captain, I'll start organizing strike teams for hit-and-run attacks. Brayler stepped forward. I can help with that. I know Trillion tech infrastructure. I can find weak points in Craxian supply lines, communications. Hawkins clapped him on the shoulder. Excellent. Work with Thompson, come up with a plan. It won't be easy, but if we can disrupt their logistics, hit them where it hurts. We might just stand a chance, Brayler finished, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. As the humans and Trillions scrambled to action, Hawkins looked out over the ruined city, his jaw set with grim determination. High Command had left them high and dry, but he'd be damned if he'd leave the Trillions to face this alone. Bureaucracy and politics be damned. He had sworn to protect the innocent, and that was exactly what he intended to do, even if it meant taking on the Craxian war machine with little more than guts and grit. He turned back to his newfound allies, humans and Trillions, united in a desperate fight for survival. All right, people, let's get to work. We've got a planet to save. General Zorgak slammed his fist on the command console, the metal denting under the force of his blow. The holographic display flickered, but the damning information remained unchanged. Another supply convoy ambushed, another communications relay destroyed. These humans and their Trillion collaborators were becoming more than just a nuisance. They were a genuine threat to his invasion. Enough, Zorgak snarled, his eyes blazing with fury. He jabbed a clawed finger at the trembling Craxian officer before him. I want that resistance crushed. Do you hear me? I don't care how many troops it takes, how many villages you have to burn. Hunt them down and eliminate them now. The officer saluted hastily, his face pale. Yes, General, it will be done. As the officer scurried away, Zorgax growled under his breath. He would not let a bunch of primitive apes and their pathetic Trillion allies derail his conquest. He would drown this planet in blood if that's what it took. Meanwhile, in the ruined streets of the Trillion capital, Lieutenant Commander Thompson crouched behind a shattered wall, her heart pounding. Beside her, Brayler clutched a makeshift plasma rifle, his face grim. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed off the rubble. Craxian soldiers, their armor glinting in the smoky light. Thompson tightened her grip on her blaster. They had to hold this position, buy time for the rest of the resistance to evacuate the civilians sheltering in the nearby ruins. A plasma bolt sizzled over their heads, close enough to make Thompson's hair stand on end. We've been spotted, she hissed. Brayler popped up from cover, squeezing off a few shots. A Craxian howled in pain. We have to draw their fire, he said, his voice shaking but determined. We can't let them reach the civilians. Thompson nodded, her jaw set. On my mark, we make a break for that alley. Ready, go! They burst from cover, sprinting across the open ground as plasma bolts filled the air around them. Thompson's lungs burned, her legs pumping. Just a little further. Suddenly, Brayler cried out, stumbling. A plasma bolt had caught him in the leg, sending him sprawling. Thompson skidded to a halt, whirling around. Brayler! The Craxians were closing in, their weapons raised. Thompson didn't hesitate. She charged back towards Brayler, firing her blaster one-handed as she hauled the injured Trillion to his feet. Come on, I've got you. Brayler leaned heavily on her, his face contorted in pain. Together they staggered towards the alley, plasma sizzling past them. They were almost there, almost. A searing pain erupted in Thompson's side. She gasped, her vision going white, a plasma bolt punching through her armor. She stumbled, her legs giving out. Brayler caught her, dragging her the last few steps into the alley. He propped her against the wall, his eyes wide with fear. "Thompson, hold on, just hold on." Thompson coughed, tasting blood. The world was going grey at the edges. Dimly she heard Brayler fumbling with her medkit, his hands shaking as he pressed a bandage to her wound. "Stay with me," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "You saved my life, let me return the favor." Thompson tried to speak, but only a wet gurgle came out. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was Brayler's desperate face, his features blurring as he worked frantically to stem the bleeding. Across the city, Captain Hawkins crept through the shadows, his heart in his throat. Intel had placed a key Craxian command center here, in the heart of the occupied zone. If they could hit it, disrupt their coordination, it could buy the Resistance precious time. He signaled to his team, a mix of human commandos and Trillian volunteers. They fanned out, taking up positions around the target building. Hawkins himself moved to the front, his blaster held ready. He caught the eye of the Trillian beside him, a young female named Zara. She looked terrified but determined. Hawkins gave her a reassuring nod. They were all scared, but they were in this together. On his signal, they burst into the command center, blasters firing. Craxians shouted in alarm, scrambling for their weapons. Consoles shattered, sparks flying. Hawkins led the charge, his face grim as he cut down Craxian after Craxian. In minutes it was over. The command center was in ruins, the Craxians dead or fled. Hawkins stood amid the wreckage, his chest heaving. Zara approached him, her eyes wide. "Captain, look!" She pointed to a console, still flickering with life. "I think this is their communications hub. If we can crack it—" Hawkins grinned, a fierce, feral thing. "We might just find a way to bring these bastards to their knees." He clapped Zara on the shoulder. "Good work. Let's grab what we can and get out of here." As they hastily downloaded data, Hawkins' thoughts turned to Thompson and Brayler, to all the brave souls fighting and dying across the city. They were in this together, human and Trillian, united against a common foe. And now, just maybe, they had a chance to win. The data from the raid was a game-changer. Brayler pored over the stolen files, his eyes widening as he took in the Craxians' true motives. They didn't just want Trillia's resources, they wanted the Trillians themselves, specifically their advanced medical knowledge. The Craxians planned to use that knowledge to create a new breed of super-soldier. Brayler slammed his fist on the table. "We have to stop them. We have to end this now." Captain Hawkins nodded grimly. "Agreed, and I think I know how." He brought up a holographic map of the Craxian headquarters. "If we can capture General Zorgax, cut off the head of the snake—" "The rest will fall," Brayler finished. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot. Brayler and Thompson would lead a small infiltration team into the compound, while Hawkins and the main force staged a frontal assault as a distraction. As they geared up, Thompson pulled Brayler aside. "Are you sure about this? It's not going to be easy." Brayler met her gaze, his jaw set. "I have to do this for my people, for everyone we've lost." Thompson clasped his shoulder. "Then I've got your back. Let's give these bastards hell." The assault was chaos. Blaster fire filled the air, explosions rocking the compound. Brayler and Thompson fought their way deeper into the facility, dispatching Craxian guards with grim efficiency. Finally, they reached the command center, and there waiting for them was General Zorgax himself. "Foolish primitives," the general snarled. "You think you can defeat me? I will crush you like the insects you are." Brayler stepped forward, his weapon raised. "It's over, Zorgax. Surrender now and your troops will be spared." Zorgax laughed, a cruel, grating sound. "Surrender? To you, I think not." His eyes glinted with malice. "Do you know why we targeted your pathetic species? It wasn't just for your resources. No, we wanted your medical knowledge. With it, we will create a new breed of Craxian warrior. Unstoppable and eternal. Rage boiled in Brayler's veins. This monster wanted to pervert Trillian science, Trillian knowledge into a weapon. He wouldn't allow it. He couldn't. With a roar, Brayler charged forward, blaster firing. Zorgax met him head-on, his own weapon blazing. They clashed in the center of the room, a whirlwind of fists and plasma. Zorgax was strong, his blows like hammers. But Brayler was fueled by righteous fury, for his fallen mentor, for his ruined university, for every Trillian life snuffed out by Craxian cruelty. Thompson and the others joined the fray, piling onto Zorgax. The general fought like a cornered beast, all fang and claw, but he was outnumbered and outmatched. In the end, it was Brayler who dealt the final blow. His blaster caught Zorgax under the chin, and the general crumpled, his eyes rolling back in his head. Silence fell, broken only by the team's ragged breathing. Brayler stared down at Zorgax's prone form, hardly daring to believe it. They had done it. They had won. News of Zorgax's capture spread like wildfire. Faced with the loss of their leader and the exposure of their vile plans, the Craxian forces beat a hasty retreat, their ships fleeing Trillian space. In the aftermath, Brayler stood amid the ruins of his world, his heart heavy. So much had been lost, so much destroyed. But as he looked around at the survivors, at the humans and Trillians working side by side to tend the wounded and clear the rubble, he felt a flicker of hope. They had a long road ahead of them. Rebuilding would be no easy task, but they would do it together, Trillian and human, united by the bonds forged in the crucible of war. Captain Hawkins approached, his face streaked with soot and sweat. "Brayler, I just got off the comm with UES High Command. They've pledged their full support in your reconstruction efforts. We're with you, every step of the way." Brayler clasped Hawkins' hand, his grip firm. "Thank you, Captain, for everything. We could not have done this without you and your people." Hawkins shook his head. "We only did what was right. You and your people are the real heroes. Your courage, your resilience in the face of such overwhelming odds. It's an inspiration to us all." As the two leaders stood there, hand in hand, Brayler felt a swell of emotion. The road ahead would be hard, but they would walk it together, Trillian and human, bound by blood and sacrifice, by a shared commitment to justice and peace. In the face of such unity, such determination, there was no obstacle they could not overcome. The Craxians had tried to break them, but they had only made them stronger. And now as one they would rebuild. They would heal. They would stand tall once more, a beacon of hope and defiance in a galaxy too often plagued by darkness. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing worth doing ever was. And as Brayler looked out over the shattered remains of his home, he knew in his heart that they would prevail. For Trillia, for humanity, for the future they would forge together. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.